Hello, I'm David Roger, General Counsel for the Las Vegas Police Protective Association. In this video and a follow-up video, I want to talk to you about the trespass statute, and specifically the trespass statute as it deals with situations in which you go to a home and one person wants to trespass the other, or in a subsequent video we're going to talk about hotel room guests. And the statute, generally speaking, allows a person to trespass a guest. And if they trespass the guest, that person has to leave. And so let's talk specifically about the statute and what is a guest. Because if the person is a guest and not a tenant, that person has to leave. If the person is a tenant, they have specific rights, and the person has to go and evict the person, and they have to go through the court process in evicting a tenant. And so let's talk specifically about the statute, and then we'll talk about the difference between a guest and a tenant. And so NRS 207.2001B says that any person who willfully goes or remains upon any land or in any building, right, condo, apartment, house, after having been warned by the owner or occupant thereof not to trespass, is guilty of a misdemeanor. And then the statute goes on and talks about what type of notice is sufficient, and specifically deals with notifying a guest that he or she has to leave. A sufficient warning against trespassing within the meaning of this section is given by any of the following methods. E, by the owner or occupant of the land or building making an oral or written demand to any guest to vacate the land or building. And then it goes on to define what a guest is. A guest means any person entertained or to whom hospitality is extended, including but not limited to any person who stays overnight. The term does not include a tenant as defined, and gives the statute NRS 118A.170. So a guest gets trespassed. A tenant has certain rights, and the owner or occupant has to go through the eviction process. And so the statute refers you to the landlord-tenant statute. And under NRS 118A.170, a tenant is defined as a person entitled under a rental agreement to occupy a dwelling unit to the exclusion of others. Now, the agreement can be written or verbal, but for your purposes, I would say, unless there was substantial evidence that was presented to you that they had a verbal agreement, which is credible, unless they have a written agreement, out. I would trespass the person. And so the person who has a written agreement to stay is a tenant, and they get to stay there, and you have to tell the person who wants to trespass them, you have to go through the eviction process. So let's see if we can't summarize this. You show up at a condo or a house, and the person who is on the lease or owns the residence says, I want to trespass this person. Unless that person has a written agreement that says that they get to stay there, they have to go. Conversely, if the person has a written agreement or some substantial evidence that makes you believe that they have an agreement to stay there, they can then stay, and the person has to go through the eviction process. And so is paying rent enough? I don't know, but if I were an officer, I would lean towards the side of trying to figure out if they have a written agreement. Because if they don't have a written agreement and they're paying rent and all of that, then they can be trespassed and they can take it up, some other time, whether they want to file a civil suit or otherwise. So a guest can be trespassed. A tenant who has a written agreement cannot be trespassed. And I've heard some officers say, well, there's a 30-day rule. And during the research, there is no real 30-day rule for a tenant, except in cases of hotels and motels. And we'll talk about that in a second. And so if a person does not have a written agreement, it doesn't matter how long they've been staying there, whether it's been 2 weeks, 3 months, if they don't have an agreement, a rental agreement, then they got to go. Otherwise, if they do have a rental agreement, then it goes through the eviction process. I hope this clarifies it. If not, take a look at the statute. It's NRS 207.200. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to give me a call at or email me at droger@lvppa.com. Thank you.
111, 110.